What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm rating some of your FPL drafts, and the teams I've chosen all have slightly different strategies and slightly different picks, and I've concentrated on talking about the players that I've not given much of a mention to in other videos as well. So let's get into it. So the strategy for this first draft is to bench boost in game week 1 and then wildcard out of it fairly early. The person that sent me this team didn't say exactly when they're looking to wildcard, but presumably it'll be in the first 3 to 6 weeks. So I'll talk about bench boost game week 1 strategy in a second because I know it's quite popular this year. But just to run through the draft itself. So Verbruggen in goal from Brighton. Back 4 is Gabriel, Kirkes, Colwill and Pedro Porro. The midfield 4 is Cherki, Salah, Palmer and Rodgers. And then up front you've got Strand Larsen and João Pedro. The bench itself is Petrovic at Bournemouth with Liverpool away game week 1. Not ideal, I would say, for a bench boost team. And then Declan Rice, Beto, and Reinildo from Sunderland, who's only 4 million. Quick thoughts on bench boost game week 1 strategy. I will try and do a chip strategy video soon because I think it's important with the double chips. Look, I don't mind getting it out of the way straight away. I think ideally to have a good bench boost, you want to do it after a wild card so you can set up for it. Or you do it before a wild card so that you can wild card out of it. And essentially in pre-season, we have unlimited transfers. Basically, we have a wild card right now. The only slight downside is you've got the least amount of money you're probably going to have for this whole season. Generally, most people who are engaged FPL managers will build team value over the season, even in the first kind of 8 to 10 weeks. So potentially later on, you'll be able to fill your bench with better players. One thing that a lot of people say is an argument against bench boost game week 1 is that we don't know who's going to start. Could there be like rotation? Is there going to be a pick that we think is going to start, then they don't, etc.? I personally don't think that's a huge issue. I think you can make a bench boost game week 1 team with 15 pretty much guaranteed starters. I'm not saying this draft is that, but I think it is possible. So that's not really a concern of mine. General thoughts about when else you might play it. Obviously, you could play it after your first wild card, although then you'd probably have a bit more money on the bench than most people like. But I do think, I haven't looked at the fixtures properly yet, but I do wonder if around game weeks 12 to 16, when we have those 5 African Cup of Nations transfers, could we tie in a wild card to a bench boost and then use the 5 free transfers to get out of it? Could that potentially be an option? Maybe. But ultimately, whenever you've got a good bench in the first 19 game weeks, you should just get the bench boost used. If you want to do it in game week 1, it's not an issue. In terms of how this particular team is set up, like Reinildo on the bench is fine for 4 million. He should start at Sunderland. You could look at Rodon at Leeds instead. Beto, I think, will probably start game week 1 because Barry is obviously new to the league, new to Everton. But there's definitely some more minutes concerns with him than maybe there was in the second half of last season. Like right now, I couldn't guarantee that Beto is going to start. It could be Barry instead. And even if Beto does start, who knows when he might come off. It might be like 65, 70 minutes, something like that. And obviously Petrovic has got Liverpool away. So like even Verbruggen and Kelleher would probably be slightly better for game week 1. Like it's a goalkeeper, right? So they can get save points even if they don't keep a clean sheet. It might be fine. So I don't mind it if you want Petrovic for the fixtures afterwards. And Bournemouth's fixtures are pretty good. But it just doesn't feel great. Like you've got unlimited transfers and the goalkeeper you're putting on the bench has Liverpool away and you're bench boosting. I'm not so sure about that. Other players, Cherki, for example, I'm going to say the same thing about him as I say about every single Man City attacker for years now. Could be great value at 6.5 million if he starts. Like if you're bench boosting, you want to almost guarantee, well, you want to try and guarantee as best as possible 15 starters. Because if Cherki doesn't start and he gets no minutes, which would be unlikely, granted, then one of those players is coming off your bench anyway. So I'd rather spend 6.5, maybe like a Kuda, especially if you're wildcarding early. Why not get the attacker with Burnley for the same price, playing against Burnley? And then wildcard later if that doesn't work out. I think Strand Larsen's pretty good. Salah and Palmer obviously great. Spoken about Rodgers quite a lot already. Pedro Porro is an interesting one. I do think he could be great. We need to see more games under Thomas Frank in pre-season to see which of the fullbacks is going to be the most attacking. Because in the first game, the reports going around are that Udogie was the one with license to get forward and Pedro Porro stayed back. But obviously, again, if you're wildcarding early, you can take that punt not a problem. Kirkes, I'm kind of coming around to. I think with the way Liverpool are setting up, he's going to have to provide a lot of width on that left side. And so I do quite like him, but obviously Van Dijk is the safer pick. So bench boost generally, I think, is a perfectly reasonable strategy. This is not personally the team that I would go with because there's a few too many question marks. And I think if you are wildcarding early, like Declan Rice is not as good for defensive contributions as you would think. I'd go for a more attacking player, I think, if you're wildcarding early. The team rating on Fantasy Football Hub's My Team tool is 87%, which isn't bad, but I think most people, by the time they get to the game week 1 deadline, will be on 90+, and they'll have a more solid team, I would say. So not bad, and I don't mind the strategy, but there's a few players in here I just wouldn't pick. And actually, I haven't mentioned it quickly, is João Pedro. I'm pretty sure he's going to start game week 1, but I don't think his minutes are necessarily secure completely. Like, early subs are definitely a possibility. I think there will be the odd game when he is benched, but it probably won't be game week 1, so you're safe enough for the bench boost in terms of that particular pick. So this next draft has no Mohamed Salah in it whatsoever, and it also comes out at an 87% team rating. If you want to get your team rating for free, by the way, link in the description below or scan that QR code on the screen. Now, if you're not going for Salah, this draft has gone for Haaland. I do think it's viable to go without either. I'm not sure that's something that I will do. I don't think I can cope with the stress levels and the amount of comments I would get about it on YouTube. But if you're not going for Salah, don't feel like you've automatically got to pick Haaland. It's not to say he's a bad pick, because of course he's not. But you could go without either if you're happy with captaining other players. So just consider that. I'm going to do a video on no Haaland and no Salah soon enough and just talk through that. So just to go through the rest of this draft, Kelleher in goal from Brentford. The back three are all 4.5 million defenders. In fact, all 5 defenders in this draft are 4.5 million. So De Kuiper for Brighton, we're all hoping he's going to be this super attacking left back. Udogie from Spurs, and then Wan-Bissaka, who's quite popular. On the bench, by the way, it's Konza and Gay. The midfield 4, Njai, Wirtz, Palmer, and Rodgers. And then up front is Peru, the Leeds 5.5 million forward. Haaland, who I've mentioned, and then Isak as well. The other 2 players on the bench are Petrovic from Bournemouth, who we've already talked about, and then Damsgaard as well, who I actually haven't talked about that much, but is only 6 million, and actually did pretty well last season with the amount of assists he got in particular. So we'll come on to that in a minute. Overall, I think there is value in 4.5 million defenders, but I'm not sure I would want 5 of them. And I know defensive contributions are new and not everyone rates them, but I do think they're probably going to be more important than some people are giving them credit for. And in this team, you've basically got no players who are good for that from defenders. Like De Kuiper, as long as he starts, could be great, could be super attacking. He could also be a risk for minutes, and he might not be given that license to get forward. Estupiñán, when he played under Hertzler, wasn't as attacking, as we'd seen previously. So De Kuiper could be great. I'm not sure he's going to be exactly like another Barco, but he's a bit of a risk. Udogie's probably fine for starts, not going to pick you up many defensive contributions, could be the fullback that gets forward for Spurs. So again, he could be value at 4.5. And Wan-Bissaka was decent enough for attacking returns last year. Don't necessarily rate the West Ham defence, but maybe there'll be some improvements this year. Konza, who is super popular, I've had him in drafts myself, is nowhere near as good for defensive contributions as you would think. Basically, last year, if it had been a thing, he would have got almost no points from it. So again, 4.5 value if he picks up clean sheets, but he's not someone you're going to be able to rely on to tick over with those 2 points, every now and again from them. And they will add up. I know it sounds like 2 points is nothing. It's an additional 2 points over the 2 you already get for appearing. It's only 1 less than an assist. It can soon add up. Gay's not bad. He's probably the best one. So I think there's value there, but also there's lots of good 5, 5.5, and 6 million defenders. You're going to struggle to get to them without downgrading an attacker. And obviously you can do that later on, but it takes 2 transfers. So I consider downgrading someone to upgrade a defender or 2. Looking at this team, if you want to stick with Haaland, the 2 players I'd probably Isak will come on to in a second. Wirtz maybe, but Damsgaard on the bench. I don't think there's a problem having a £6 million player that rotates in, but you could go to 5.5 and get like Arias from Wolves or Anderson from Forest. You could even go all the way down to 5 if you wanted to. and put that million elsewhere. So I like value in 4.5 million defenders. I'm just not sure you need 5 of them. Just on Damsgaard, by the way, let me just go on to the FPL page. He did do really well last year. 34 starts, 2 goals, 10 assists. Doesn't score enough for my liking, but will chip in with attacking returns. For 6 million, definitely not a bad option. I know there's a lot of discussion around, how good, well, not how good, but how bad Brentford might be. They've lost Norgard and Burmo, Visser might go, they've lost Thomas Frank. But they strike me as a club that will be fine. A bit like Brighton. They're very well run, and they have got good other options as well. So I think Damsgaard's not a bad pick in his own right for 6 million. I'm just not sure I'd have him on the bench in this particular team. Peru is a risk at Leeds, longer term. They probably will sign a number 9 at some point. Might not be before game week 1, but the transfer window doesn't shut until September. If we knew Peru was nailed, and on penalties, for example, I think 5.5, he'd be in my team straight away. I think Leeds will be fairly strong this year compared to a lot of newly promoted teams. But I think he's going to be a problem for you sooner rather than later. And Isak, you just can't go for right now. 10.5 million. He said that he wants to explore leaving Newcastle. And again, the problem is, unless before game week 1, we hear that Isak signed a new bumper contract, he's had a massive pay rise, he's definitely staying, you just can't pick him. Now, if he goes to Liverpool, maybe that's why he's in your team, because you're hoping he goes to Liverpool. If that's the case, then I don't mind it, right? Because he will start for Liverpool. But even then, is Isak guaranteed to start every single game for Liverpool? I'm not sure he is. I think he's had injury concerns in the past. And when Liverpool, now early season, probably not an issue. But once Champions League kicks up, is he going to start weekend, midweek, weekend? With Ekitike there as well? Probably not. I actually think there's a chance Isak becomes a slightly worse option at Liverpool than Newcastle. He loses penalties, and I think he'll lose some minutes as well. So I think right now you can't pick him in case he leaves Newcastle. And if he goes to Liverpool, I'm not going to sit here and say he's a bad option, because obviously he's not. But I think he's slightly worse than at Newcastle. So just really consider that. I think dropping him down to like a Bowen or a 7.5 or a 6.5, it gives you so much money to play elsewhere. I think it's worth it. So this next draft has gone very premium heavy. It's got all of Salah, Haaland and Palmer. And interestingly, it comes out with a 91% team rating. I'm not sure I necessarily agree the rating should be that high. And I'm going to tell you why. Let's quickly go through the draft first of all. So Kelleher in goal from Brentford again, who is quite a popular pick this season. Interestingly, Valdemarson on the bench. So he's the 4 million backup from Brentford. I quite like having that kind of combination. Because if Kelleher gets injured, then you've got the next goalkeeper ready to come on. You don't necessarily have to make a goalkeeper transfer straight away. And it's unlikely you're going to want 2 or 3 Brentford attackers anytime soon. So you're not blocking yourself from a triple up or anything like that. The back 3 is once again 3 4.5 million defenders. Very popular. Wan-Bissaka, Konza and Van der Ven. The midfield 4 is Kudus, Salah, Palmer and Lefay from Sunderland, who I don't think is a bad 5 million option if he's going to continue to start. Might get you the odd defensive contribution, but having to play him most weeks, not so sure about that. And then up front, you've got Solanke, Haaland and João Pedro. The rest of the bench outside of goalkeepers is Reinildo, again, quite popular, £4 million Sunderland defender. Esteve from Burnley, £4 million Burnley defender, of course, and then Ramsey from Burnley as well. I had a look at Ramsey. He was injured for a lot of last season, so it was hard to know what his minutes might be like going forward. But generally, if there's a £4.5 million midfielder that's going to play regularly, there'll be a lot of hype about them in the community. I've not really seen anything about him. So if you're a Burnley fan and you think he's going to play regularly, let me know in the comments below. I'm not so sure he is. So if you can't play him, you've always got to play Lefay, unless, of course, you play a back 4. But if you do that, you're always playing a Sunderland or a Burnley defender. So don't get me wrong, right? There's positives. Haaland, Salah and Palmer is great. Solanke decent. Kudus is decent. The 4.5 million defenders are decent enough value. João Pedro is fine. I've already spoken about my concerns around him, but I'm sure he'll start more often than he doesn't. But I just think this kind of draft, in theory, could work really well, right? But you run into problems quite quickly. Like, as soon as you've got an injury, you're not really going to want to play most of those players on your bench. So that kind of forces you into having to transfer out that player that gets injured, even if it's like a minor injury and they're only out for like a week. And don't get me wrong, right? Sunderland and Burnley at points are going to have decent fixtures, so it might be okay to play them, but you only really want to play them against each other. As soon as Burnley aren't playing Sunderland at home, how much do you want to play their defenders? Esteve might be okay for a defensive contribution, so I don't mind him. I just don't like having 4 million defenders. It just leaves you quite stuck. Most weeks, you're going to want to play Wan-Bissaka, Konza, and Van der Ven, and they're not always going to have good fixtures. Now, you could argue that those downsides are outweighed by having Palmer, Salah, and Haaland, but I just don't think long-term this will do that well. I think the value in those 3 players, those premiums, is captaincy. And most of the time, you can just get away with 2 premiums for captaincy. And the money you get to spend elsewhere by dropping one of them just improves the rest of your team so much that you shouldn't worry about having that 3rd captain option. So I don't hate Salah and Haaland, but I'm not sure I would have Palmer as well. Like, you drop Palmer down to, I don't know, who's like Saar, I guess, or Rodgers, someone like that. Suddenly you've got like 3.5 million to spend elsewhere. Lefay becomes Wirtz. Like, Palmer and Lefay or Wirtz and Rodgers, I know which way I'm going. And then personally, I would downgrade one of Jab, Pedro, or Solanke and just upgrade that bench a little bit. This could work. Last year, I was fixated on starting with Haaland, not having Salah. And I remember Praz had both. And he got some cheap other players in. He did really well. And the idea, I don't know what he did in the end, but the idea was whichever one needs to be dropped later on, that's when you spread the money. So I don't mind that if you get away with everything else. Like, if everything in this team goes perfectly, it'll be amazing, right? But I just think you give yourself a better chance if you've got more money spread around. Like, after 4 weeks, if you've not made a transfer, great. You want to drop one of Palmer, Salah, Haaland, then you've got the moves to go elsewhere. But you get a slight issue in this team and you just don't have the backup. So I always look at these teams and hope they would do really well. They're just not what I personally would go for. But hey, I've never won FPL, so what do I know? So what do I know anyway is what I'm trying to say. I've never won FPL and I can't speak either. How do I make FPL videos? So this final draft is a 3-5-2 formation, although with Strand Larsen on the bench, it could easily be a 3-4-3 in other game weeks. And it's got Salah and Palmer as the 2 premiums, which is probably the most popular combination at the moment. So you could say this is the most template draft in this video. I don't say template negatively though, like other people do. Generally, a template pick is popular for a reason. Not always. Sometimes people get it wrong, but often they're just good picks. And you don't need to go differential to do well in FPL. So lots of standard good picks in this draft. The goalkeeper combination is a little bit different than I've seen. Kelleher and Verbruggen. I don't mind going for 4.5 million goalkeepers. In most of the drafts I've done, I've gone for a 5 and a 4. So I've still spent the same money. But there's no reason you can't rotate to pick up the better fixtures, like play your goalkeeper in the better fixture. The reason people don't do that is because they get frustrated with missing out on a haul. Like, if you play Kelleher game week 1 of Verbruggen hauls, it'll just frustrate a lot of people when that happens. But if you can cope with that and just accept that you're going to have points on your bench at times, it's absolutely fine. In this back 3, you've got a couple more premium defenders. In a lot of the drafts I've seen that were sent to me, there's lots of 4.5 and 4 millions. In this draft, you've got Gabriel and Frimpong. I've got to be honest, at this stage of pre-season, I'm still undecided who my favourite premium defender is. But I like Gabriel, Vardiol, and Van Dijk in particular. Cucurella is decent as well. I do quite like just going for Sanchez in goal, though, to back the Chelsea defence. But there's nothing wrong with Cucurella. Gabriel, great goal threat, great defence, etc. Not going to be great for defensive contributions, but should pick up enough goals and clean sheets to kind of keep up with those defenders that will get a lot of defensive contributions. Frimpong, in theory, is amazing, right? He's going to be super attacking. He's going to play every game. But with Bradley there, I'm not so sure it's a guarantee Frimpong starts every game. And if he does, he's getting subbed early. So I'm really in 2 minds about Liverpool fullbacks, Kerkez and Frimpong in general. Part of me thinks, look what they're building. It's scary. If they get Isak, and they've got Wirtz already, and they've still got Salah, let's say Ekitike plays off the left, or it's Gakpo, you've got these 2 fullbacks that can get up and down the pitch. We know how attacking they can be. That is who we should go for. But defensive contributions are just making me think it's not worth risking their minutes. You just go for Van Dijk instead. But I will not sit here and tell anyone they shouldn't pick Frimpong or Kirkez, because the excitement level for those kind of players is definitely there. Put it this way, when I'm watching a Liverpool match, if I've got Kirkez and he's starting, you're going to enjoy watching that. Watching Van Dijk run up for corners, man, not so much. And then Konza again is the 4.5. I've spoken about him a lot. Kudus I like. I'm quite a cautious manager when it comes to minutes. So I look at Kudus and think, how many minutes is Johnson going to get on that right side? Will Kudus start every game when Spurs have got Champions League? Not so sure. When he does, is he going to get subbed early for Johnson? We're not sure how Thomas Frank's going to use him. So again, not a bad pick. I'm just not sure that's the 6.5 I will go for. But I think as a short-term move, especially with Burnley at home, I like him. Salah and Palmer I've spoken about so much, I won't go into that anymore. Obviously, Chelsea did have Club World Cup, so we'll see how many minutes Palmer gets before game week 1, but presumably he's going to start. Salah, I think, is good. A full 1 million less than Eze. Decent underlying numbers last year, 15 attack and returns. Good option at 6.5. Not great that he's playing Chelsea away first game, but then it's Forest at home, Villa away, and Sunderland at home. That looks a little bit better. Shard is an interesting one at Brentford. He's gone up to 7 million now, still listed as a midfielder. Not bad returns last year when he played, and his underlying numbers are quite good. I just think if I'm spending 7 million, I think I prefer Semenyo or Kluivert. To be fair, Shard got 11 goals, 4 assists in 26 returns. 26 starts, 140. He did way better than I thought. And you've got Sunderland away in game week 3. Forest way to start the season is okay. Villa at home's not bad. It's okay, I guess. Sunderland away decent. Chelsea at home bit tougher. Fulham away. I don't know the fixture. I just think Bournemouth's fixtures are better. Bashada's underlying data was decent. I think 7 million. I'm going Bournemouth, but I don't hate the Sharda pick. I guess with Bournemouth as well, there's a bit more. I know they've sold a few defenders, but there's a bit more consistency with the manager, and a lot of their attackers have stayed. So you could frame it that way. But honestly, like I said earlier, I think Brentford will be okay. So I don't mind the Sharda pick. Definitely not template. Personally, I think I prefer Semenyo or Kluivert. Welbeck and Strand Larsen I've spoken about a lot. I like them at 6.5. Bowen's an interesting one for 8 million. I think because he's not a midfielder any longer, there's this mindset that he shouldn't be picked. But actually, for 8 million, I like him. And lots of people are looking at forwards, saying there's not many good options. Bowen is so consistent. He's definitely going to start every game. 90 minutes pretty much every match. He always gets 10 plus goals pretty much every season. He's so consistent. Sunderland away, good fixtures to start. The fixtures after that are good as well. And also, somebody needs to take penalties next year for West Ham. Paquetá looks like he's going to leave. He was first choice. Maybe if Fulkrug can stay fit, he might get penalties. But it could be Jarrod Bowen. He doesn't have the greatest record, but you'd still rather have your FPL pick on them than not. So potentially you've got an £8 million forward that you know has got great minutes and could be on penalties as well. You could argue for 0.5 less, like Solanke, Chris Wood, Mateta are as good for less money. I think I just like Bowen because we know what we're getting. So decent pick. And then Gay and Salah on the bench from Bournemouth. I don't think he's going to start. I think they've got a new left back called Truffert. He's going to start instead. So good draft, but I would say that because it's more like the one I would do. But I don't know. Maybe it's because we're 2.5 weeks out from the deadline and it's easy to just like every draft. I think there's loads of ways to play because of the prices to Salah and Haaland. I think going for both could work. I think going for both plus another premium is more difficult. I think going without either could work as well. Just Salah, just Haaland, it all looks pretty good. You just got to hold your nerve whichever way you decide to go. Anyway, if you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button. Get your team rated for free using the link in the description below. And I might do another one of these videos soon because people seem to like them. If you do like it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll catch you again soon.